Welcome back to this guest who's only been in some of the most popular and iconic films of our time, and Yellowstone, which was the most watched new cable series last year on Paramount Network, is back for season 2, and the Dutton family is back, and the patriarch of that family, the actor, 2-time Academy Award winner and Golden Globe winner, Kevin Costner. Good to see you, sir.
Nice to see you, buddy.
So we just saw you moments ago roll in a couple putts here on our Callaway corner. And you were saying, I overheard you, that it's been a while since you got out there on the golf course. Pretty much,
I don't get out much. That movie, that Tin Cup movie kind of gave people the impression that was something I did all the time. And then playing at Pebble Beach, that reinforced it. So, but I don't. And I think sometimes when I play, it's in front of millions of people. I know guys that can't tee off at the first tee because some guy eating pancakes at Bel Air goes, and they... But every time I play, it feels like it's in front of a billion people.
Right. Well, what sort of preparation did you do for that movie? I mean,
Gary and Pete Costas, Gary McCord and Pete Costas, tried to help me as much as I could. But as we all know, too much information about golf. It's just, I could only absorb a few things.
Right.
The one thing that I took away in that thing is I wouldn't have a beautiful swing there. He was a little West Texas golfer, used to playing on Muni courses in the wind. So everything was like a knockdown shot. So I kind of played the movie that way a lot. I mean, he made it up kind of like Trevino, if you would. But those guys were always great. And, I had, great experiences. In fact, I actually played a Palm Spring thing because they wanted to try to introduce me to golf as much as I could.
Sure.
They said, come down and do the Palm Spring thing. And I go, okay. And I swear to God, and I watched, it's not like I'm a rube, but you don't really get it quite away, when you're doing it with them. And actually, on the second hole, I feel like I picked up everybody's marks. I picked up my money, and I thought we were out of the hole. And there was a moment in time where actually the marshal there froze. Everybody froze. It was like on the second hole, I picked up Gary's thing or whatever. And I realized something had happened. I remember I quick saw the marshal who saw what happened. He was sitting right on his little 3-stool thing right there.
Yes.
And I said, I picked this up. I'm putting it right back where we're just going to keep going, okay? And I did. He looked at me, and I don't know, my voice carried.
Yes.
And I said, I'm putting it right back down here. Let's not make a big deal about this. I was just picking up the stuff. It was like...
And so,
He played on. I had another terrible experience. I might as well just tell this.
No, go for it, Kevin.
That same experience was also with pros. It was that Pro-Am out there. And I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I'm out there, and I'm now going to be between Peter Jacobson and somebody else, and I'm like anything, I don't want to necessarily go hit in front of them right away, 7th grade, you don't want to take your first shower in front of everybody. It's like, what am I going to do here? I don't want to hit. I'm not sure how to go about this. And so I'm kind of waiting for my spot, and my caddy, who's a kid I was sponsoring at USC, he comes over and he goes, what's in your bag? And I said, what? He goes, your bag. And I said, what are you talking about? Because I'm waiting. He goes, I had 2 guns in there. I had 2 guns. When I wasn't, what was it? I hadn't been in my bag for about 7 months after that movie. When I was out there in Arizona, because I wasn't that great at golf, I loved like hunting quail and rabbits. So I'd play about 6 holes in the evening when the light was perfect.
Right.
And then I had a little 22 and 2 little 22s, a pistol and a thing. And so I would get some quail or some rabbit, and that's what I did. And it was still in the bag because it had the head covers on it. So he goes, what do I do? And I said, he goes, there's ammo too. And I go, well, there should be, but I go, what do you got? I said, just take it back to the car. I don't want to hit in front of these guys anyway. I could use the stall. He was white-faced because he was going to be a pro.
Well, the ammo is usually a Callaway.
It's heavy, yeah.
And the iron, there's no 22 iron in the bag usually.
The head cover was over the thing. I'd take my young son out, and we would start playing at 4 when the sun got low, and we would hunt. There was nobody on the course.
And so your caddy just remain calm.
Well, that was
good?
Yeah, you got to go take it because it's heavy. It was heavy.
That's right, because normally when a bag is heavy, they're looking in there to see what they could take out if they're going to be.
Yeah, he knew right away something was wrong, so he couldn't figure out. He counted the clubs, but he didn't take the head cover off. He says it's still right, and he pulled it off, and then there's the 22.
Kevin Costner here on the Rich Eisen Show, and it's interesting the U.S. Open is at Pebble Beach this week right now.
Right.
And so here we go. What was it like playing Pebble?
That was
beautiful
for me. That's the most
course.
beautiful course I've ever been on. I just, you get out there and there's all these people, and when you're on the course, you get angles that no one else gets, and it is the most dynamic, beautiful course for me, at least.
Kevin Costner here on the Rich Eisen Show. So, what do you do when you're not acting? Do you bike? Do you hike? I mean, you're not out there on the golf course.
Well,
I
I love taking my family outdoors. I'm headed to British Columbia with them, next week, and we'll be salmon fishing the 8, 9, and 10, and we've already got the bets in place and stuff like that.
Like, what do you mean? Just
well,
like about
first
catching
fish, biggest fish, anything to kind of keep them interested. I'm really dying to see how my young daughter, does out there, because it's a fishing trip. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't want to leave her out of this experience. So she can say next year if she wants to do it or not, but I want her to have it. Mm-hmm. So, I'm uncertain how she's going to deal with it, because you go to a lodge and that's what you do.
And it takes some patience, obviously, but any kid will do that. But what if she does catch the first fish? I mean,
what if she does? Well, I already explained to her the money deal, and so.
Well, that's a great Father's Day situation, obviously. And with it, Father's Day this weekend. Again, Yellowstone is on the Paramount Network, and we will hit that in a second. The TV show that just lit up ratings and screens last year, and season 2 is coming up. To me, and we've had this conversation before, to me, what makes a good sports movie is you can have obviously the great sports moments, or the actor or actress, the relationship between man and woman. To me, it's the father-son relationship. Any great sports movie has a father-son relationship. Yeah. And anytime I see Field of Dreams, anytime, playing, wherever I am, I cry. I mean, I've missed up. I know it's coming. I know the father-son moment in the movie's coming, but I can't get enough of it.
That thing that goes unspoken between father and son, and it's not just men that enjoy that movie, but that thing when we go too long without saying what we really mean to each other, that movie, it moves people not only to tears, but it moves them to that shoulder crying, that kind of dry where you can't quite get your breath because you've missed a moment. And that movie did it. That was our big car crash. That was our big fight. That was our big cavalry charge. It was, you want to have a catch. And a lot of people revisit that moment. But the other thing that struck me was not only that particular moment, but the speech that James Earl Jones does always struck me in the sense that, not to say that James Earl Jones isn't an athlete, but it's hard to imagine Mantle or Mays or Williams ever articulating the sport the way he was able to. So you have a non-athlete articulate the sport that we all love and play till the streetlights come on, season to season. That's what's so remarkable about that movie, that like a chalkboard it erases, and everything that was good could still be again. And it took a non-athlete, it took a literary guy to actually explain to athletes what it is they just know intuitively, but would have a hard time, I think, explaining.
Well, and it's still true, right? I mean, that speech never, ever gets old or
it's biblical.
Thin, right? Exactly. What was it like shooting that scene, though, with Ray Kinsella and his father? I mean, how long did you figure out how to play
we had
that?
to do that. You could notice that we did that at Magic Hour. You also noticed that when that shot pulled back and you saw all those cars, now, but that would have been CG'd. But that was technically, that was all extras that we called on the radio, come be in our movie. And they created that big traffic jam.
Hold on a second. So that traffic jam, that's a real
shot. And the people from Iowa came, and so many people feel like they were part of that movie. So those thousands and thousands of cars that were in that giant traffic jam that went out on those 2 lanes, that was real. It went out over the radio. They didn't know what they were doing. They supported the movie. Now looking back, they know they were a part of it.
That's amazing. I've never heard of
we
that.
would have been able to do that simple now with the way movies work. But that was how are we going to get them all here? And we just said, call them, tell them they want to be in a movie, they'll come.
Of course, if you call them, they will come. that's the
a lot of children say they were born on that night, It's really fun. You talk to people, and they go, "It was an amazing experience."
But in terms of playing it, in terms of, as you said, the quiet moment before the speaking that was left unsaid.
Yeah.
How did you work that, Kevin?
Well, what I did was I went back to when I first read it, and so I become the audience when I read it. And when I read it, I went, I couldn't believe that it had orchestrated itself to that thing, and I had that feeling on the couch. And so I knew if I played that straight, if I didn't wink at anybody, that these players did come. That's my corn. And I knew that was possible. And that's what I do when I look at movies. I put an audience on my shoulder. It's not like I don't understand, people that make a movie they don't understand or they're surprised that it was good. I try to make a movie when I start one, I can see why it would work. I can also tell sometimes during the process of when we're slipping away from what was good. And for as gentle a movie as Field of Dreams really is, what you really have to understand is the fine line that we had to play in order to people not reject us as a movie. Like, come on. And the real value of this movie, I get so much credit for this movie, and really it sits with Phil Robinson, who wrote it and directed it, kind of a non-athlete himself, but an artist. And, Phil Robinson is the architect of that movie. I tell a story, and I don't tell it often, but, they kept coming after me. I wasn't going to be able to do that movie. I was going to do Revenge, and I got into finally, Revenge kept getting pushed, and finally I had to put my foot down and say, look, if you don't get this movie together, I'm going to go to do this movie in the corn. That's what I'm going to do. And the guy said, I'll sue you. And I go, I figured that was the first thing coming out of your mouth. And we went at it, and I said, I heard you were smart. I heard you were a smart guy. Mm-hmm. I said, how come you can't figure this out? I said, we'll go to court or you figure it out. And he did. He figured it out. He goes, the day you ended that corn movie, 4 days later, you come to me on my set. That's when I stayed at the San Ysidro Ranch. I'll tell you that story someday. Mm-hmm. But I asked the director, why did you hold out for me so long? Why? And he said, well, and this is one of the greatest actors we've ever seen. He goes, they wanted me to do it with Robin Williams. And I said, Robin Williams is perfect. He said, yeah, but when I think of Robin, I think he does hear voices in the corn. And I don't want that. People don't believe you hear voices. And that was a really interesting, that's a director that makes a save. That's a Mariano Rivera,
Sure.
It's a save. He saved his movie because of his belief in an idea, not the quality of actor, because Robin Williams will never.
Of course.
This is a guy so special. But I was curious. I said, he's actually a bigger star than me, whatever. And he goes, I need somebody that you don't think hears voices.
And that would be you. I've never heard Robin Williams was considered for that role. That's unbelievable. And then you did it, and obviously we're talking about it today.
Yeah. It had gold dust on it when I read it because I did that little intake of breath. Do you want to have a catch? And of course, I wept myself.
Kevin Costner here on the Rich Eisen Show. We see so many movies today are sequels. You once told Roger Ebert you'd never do a sequel. Do you remember that conversation?
I don't know that I've never run into the sequel that I would do yet. Boy, you never want to get caught in the never game. But the truth was, I love Bull Durham, and I didn't need to do a Bull Durham 2, and I love Tin Cup and Bodyguard, and I love those things. So I wasn't inclined to do them because usually sequels are commissioned after the first week in a box office.
Right.
They're not commissioned because somebody's thought what the story's going to be. They're commissioned because they know these movies are going to work, and I'm pretty anal in how I think about things. I'm like, well, I need to see that the second Field of Dreams is as good as the first one, because that movie means something to me. And they don't like to work it that way. They want to just put it in the can and go. So I wasn't inclined to do them because I very rarely saw somebody, I will do a sequel. I'm thinking of directing one, but I know how it works. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work because it made money. It works from a literary standpoint.
Can you let me in on which one you're thinking about?
It's a Western that I want to do. Yeah, it's a Western I want to do, and it covers 30 years, and I'm going to act in it and direct it, and it's one of those things that just it's kind of like a Field of Dreams for me. Not the same type of movie because it's rough and tough, but I have a lot of moments when I read it where I just go, I just find that.
So it's something you've been in before, the sequel, or you're just a sequel?
I'm gonna go make it, and it'll be 1, 2, 3.
Oh, you're gonna make something that has something original with sequels.
That's
after.
right. That's right.
I'm just asking a sequel of something that you've been.
I was gonna make a sequel of Mr. Brooks because that story kept going.
Huh.
But I haven't been inclined. So now, if I said that to Roger, I'll take that back. I said, but what I'm. I've never been able to find one that I thought was better than the next.
So let me flip it before we move to Yellowstone here, Kevin Costner. Which story would you be interested in the prequel of a character that you've played? So in advance, you could do a story or wondering about the story of a character that you've portrayed prior to it.
Let me just circle this again. This Western I'm telling you about, the original script was written 20 years ago. I haven't made it and started thinking about what would be like, because a lot of times on Westerns, you don't know who the character is coming off the landscape, right? Mm-hmm. You don't know about the town. All you know really is the town's having trouble. This guy coming in actually probably has the tools to solve this, but what we believe is he's trying to leave his life behind. That's the architecture of the gunfighter leaving his life behind, but he comes into a town that's in need of just that thing. And so if it's going to be great, the story is going to have to be great because that's the cliche. That's the formula. You want to give up, this town needs you. And so that film I'm talking about 20 years ago had those elements. But the longer I began to think about it, I thought, what if the guy coming in, we know everything about? What if the town he's coming into, you know exactly how it came to be? And that's what's resulted in this ongoing movie that I want to do.
Now let's talk Yellowstone. Kevin Costner here on the Rich Eisen Show. A tremendous first season, an average of 5.1 million total viewers per episode. That's tops for a new show on cable. What do you think worked for Yellowstone so well last year that you are back for season 2, debuting next Wednesday at 10
Well, I guess if
Eastern?
people could have found the channel, it might have doubled.
Well, I mean, it's Paramount Network.
It was the first show on Paramount, and my dad kept saying, people don't know how to find this, Kevin. And I get those phone calls a lot. It was like, and I don't like how you're behaving either. Your mother is not very happy with the language. Most of the people here in assisted living don't want to watch it. I get those calls, and so I have to deal with it. I said, "You're right, Dad. It's a little colorful, isn't it?" Yes, it is. And so, I got to pass the mother test all the time.
Sure.
Still.
Of course. Well, that's good.
But it's a world. I only thought I was going to do one season. There was a couple of reasons why I elected to play it out for them. But it's been nice to. There's a lot of movies that deal with the lawyering and the hospital and the inner streets. And sometimes when you put stories and they're set against the way the country still exists, you can still go out there and see it. I'm working in a valley, the exact same valley, the exact same river that Lewis and Clark went down. There's something beautiful and special, and you see it every day. And I think when people see the imagery of horses set against these mountains, these valleys that are the same thing that they were thousands and thousands of years ago, not since 1873 or not since 1973, but thousands and thousands of years ago. It takes me back. I think people are enjoying the visual just as much.
And then some of the politics and intrigue. I mean, this isn't like something set in 1873. This is
no, and you're right. You're really right about that because those problems were arbitrated differently back then. There were no agents. There were no publicity. There was no lawyering. People arbitrated, and that fabric keeps itself still established in those Western states. To be honest, there's still that mentality, although people know they can't put hands on each other. They're not supposed to, but that mentality is really alive. But where Yellowstone picks up, the family's incredibly dysfunctional. It's just as dysfunctional as can be. But he's dealing with those external pressures that you're talking, Native American issues, urbanization, environmental protection, everything that this one guy who's really a CEO of this land, he's the one guy that's maybe going to lose it out of all because these pressures are not something he can deal with in the old-fashioned way.
It's at 10 Eastern and Pacific on Paramount Network, and if you need help finding it, just ask Kevin's dad. He knows exactly how to find that.
People, you got to clean up that language, fella. You got to clean it up. Your mother's watching, and everybody here at the place is watching.
Next Wednesday at 10 Eastern and Pacific. Before I let you go, you've told some great stories here on the show. You've told one about Hackman, No Way Out. You told one about Burt Lancaster, obviously from Field of Dreams, and from The Untouchables, Sean Connery. Do you have a De Niro one? A good Robert De Niro story from The Untouchables, which, by the way, is one of those remote drop movies for me. Doesn't matter where I am, what I'm doing, where I'm picking it up. If it's just 5 minutes in or with 5 minutes to go, I am dropping the remote.
I had a hard time with De Niro, and not because of him, but because of my character. And I remember I was a young actor. I didn't exactly know how to deal with it, but I was a straight and narrow guy on that thing, and so my dialogue was really precise. And we got into this big scene where he kept going, "What? And what caused me to have to repeat, but it's like I couldn't get off the page with the kind of street language he could get, and Connery goes, "Just listen to him, Mr. Ness. You'll know when to get in it." and he goes, "Don't try to compete. Don't try to compete, Mr. Ness." And
he would refer to you as Mr. Ness.
Yeah, he would call me Mr. Ness, Mr. Nash, and. But he was helpful to me because De Palma, it was right. He's a gangster. He's going, and I had to deal with him with the language that Mamet had, and I really learned a lot. He's also every time I've seen him, he's also treated me really great, and that's nice. And
then his scene with the baseball bat. Again, it's a very different. It's not a sports movie, obviously, but
it's not.
But in terms of soliloquies involving sports. He
really handled that. He really handled that scene great, because it's. I remember reading that, thinking that's tough language to deal with, and he commanded it. He made that circle. De Palma did his little circle thing, which he loves, and so that was a big moment for me. That whole thing. I mean, listen, I had one kind of embarrassing moment there. I was actually talking with Sean. And they had yellow tape keeping people way back. And I was talking to them, and this one very beautiful woman kept saying, and it was like, but it was, and I was thinking, I'm talking to him. What? And it was like, and after a minute or so, I finally kind of made my way, and I said, yeah. And she goes, "Could you get me Mr. Connery's autograph?" And I thought. Yeah. I thought, really?
Hey,
but listen. That's how big Sean was. Sean was the biggest star.
He's Bond. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's where it all started.
Mr. Nash.
Yeah, Mr. Nash. That's so funny. He would call you that off.
Yes,
off camera.
He did.
It's fantastic. And it's true with the De Niro speech. I mean, baseball. When a man stands alone at the plate, it's time for individual achievement. But when you're on the field, you're part of a team. Teamwork. Teamwork.
There's a story that's worth knowing about Sean. You'd want to know whether the camera's rolling or not.
Sure.
There was a moment in time he was really upset, man. He was upset with the producer. He was upset that they had kept him too long. And for Sean, money was very, very important. Not that it isn't for everybody. But he was going to lose money because the schedule was running, and he had to be out of the country in a certain amount of days. And in his mind, he'd been promised. Okay, got to keep that in mind. His mind, he'd been promised, and that started slipping away. And I'm telling you what, he started to boil, and it was a really interesting moment. I happened to be walking through the hallway, and he's in the bar, and he goes, "Mr. Nash." I heard it all the way out there. He goes, "Come here, I want to talk to you." And I go in to talk to him, and I'm thinking, what does he really want to talk to me? And he's got a yellow legal pad, and he's got a line down the minute, and he goes. He tells me that he's been promised things, and he goes, "You've been on the set every day," and he had this whole list of things that were wrong, that didn't happen. Like, did that happen? Did that happen? Did that happen? And I was like nodding, yes. And over here, the one thing, and what it was, and then he went and just tore somebody up. But for him, it was important that he's clear about what he thought the truth was.
Sure.
And as I kept saying, yeah, you're right there, I'm thinking, I'm killing this guy. He's going to go talk to. I'm literally killing this guy. But Sean's desire to be fair was what I found interesting in who he was.
I love having you on, Kevin. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for making this part of anything you ever do. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You bet. Yellowstone on the Paramount Network, premiering next Wednesday, season 2, 10 p.m. Eastern and Pacific, right here on The Rich Eisen Show.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download the Rich Eisen Show app.